Hello, and welcome, friends, to this 19th year of the Turner Winter Series. If you are a regular participant in these discussions, you will note that I am not Maureen Raveno, your typical welcomer, nor Greg Peterson, the founder and perennial host of the Turner Winter Series. I am Kristen McMahon, president of the Robert H. Jackson Center, and we welcome those with us in the Kappa Theater at the center, as well as those joining the program virtually. Before I turn the conversation over to Greg, let me start with a brief introduction of our guest, Gerrard Linnecke. Gerry Linnecke is a Western New York native with a long and apparently storied history, serving as a court reporter in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and New York State. After graduating from SUNY Alfred's court reporting program in 1983, he started working, primarily in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. For 7 years, he served as the court reporter for Judge Michael Muir, a U.S. District Judge for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. He next served as a family court reporter in Buffalo, New York. And in 1997, he accepted a transfer and moved his family to Chautauqua County to be the court reporter for New York State Supreme Court Justice Joe Gerasi. And he spent the next 20 years covering all New York State Supreme Court justices in Chautauqua County. Gerry retired in August 2023, and his final service was to Chautauqua County Court Judge David Foley. Gerry and his wife Beth married in 1986, and they have 3 children, Christine, Courtney, and Ryan. It is our pleasure to welcome Gerry Linnecke and turn the conversation over to Greg Peterson.
Thank you, Kristen. And Gerry Linnecke, I didn't think this day would ever happen.
Neither did I, Greg.
And the fact, given the quantity and the quality of the crowd behind me, is definitely my prayer that their presence, given who they are, does not dampen your candor.
Now, Greg, do you use prayer as a legal relief, or are you really praying for that?
I'm really praying for the big guy to intervene here.
Very good.
Clearly your personality and professionalism has
Oh,
preceded you. That's why we're doing this today. And
of course.
there's a boatload of people watching this online.
Boatload.
Well, there's many people who have sent around emails. I've never had more people send me comments, questions,
I'm sure.
queries.
Queries,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Greg, please consider asking this question. But it's been remarkable. But just to kind of give a quick, we'll do a little bio. Kristen did some of that, but Wellsville, New York, Allegheny County.
Scioto. Actually, a Scioto boy.
A Scioto.
Yes, Wellsville kind of was, we all acknowledged Wellsville was the biggest town in the area, but we were actually Scioto kids. Beth and I were both Scioto kids. Yeah, graduated from Scioto High School. Yep, Wellsville was 4 miles up the road, and we acknowledged them, but we didn't go much. We used to call Wellsville the suburb of Scioto, which wasn't true, Greg.
So if I were to Google Scioto, and aside from seeing yours and Beth's name, what else might I see?
You would see that the name apparently was named after a designation on the railroad map as Section 10, and it was abbreviated as SC10 and eventually became Scioto.
Scioto.
That's how they come up with names for towns, Greg. It's like Onoville, right? Every time somebody made a suggestion, someone else said, oh, no.
So you grew up as a man loaded with activities, a Christmas tree farm. Is that your dad's?
Christmas tree farm, that was my dad's, his older buddy. They started planting trees, and they planted trees so that his sons could go up and trim them and cut them down and haul them down to his yard and hold them up for people and tie them onto the tops of cars and then take the money to Dad at the end of the day.
Were you the salesman out there, or were you just a laborer?
We were salesmen, we were laborers, we were everything, yeah, just young kids, holding up trees, man, we knew that if we sold all the trees, it was gonna be a great Christmas. We had great Christmases. We had, great Christmases.
So you're out there, really, you're outside, it's a rural area.
Very rural.
and hunting, fishing.
Yeah.
Do you share some of your tips with Judge Cass and others? I mean, did they listen to you?
There is no tip I could give Judge Cass.
Okay.
I mean, right?
Oh, yeah.
Judge Cass invited me hunting one time. He said, Gerry, we're going to go hunt some turkeys. He said, make sure you got a nice pair of boots. I'll meet you at this place. So we meet at this place. He gets out of his car. He's got like almost nothing on. Pair of track shoes. I'm sure they were track shoes. I don't know. But we started walking up through the woods, and there was a little snow on the ground. He cuts a turkey track. He's like, oh, there they are, Gerry. Come on. And off he goes. Off he goes. Now I'm carrying this 10-gauge single shotgun. I've got these boots on. I'm running after him, man. Oh my God, I couldn't believe I was in that. So I chased him, thinking to myself, this is the stupidest thing I have ever partaken in. We come up over the hill, there's the birds, his gun comes up, bang, he kills that big gobbler right there, dead. And I was like, oh my God. So we kept going, and I had this, and we kept going, and at one point he said, there they are, Gerry, and I just turned and shot just to stop the insanity. It was unbelievable. But he killed that bird, and that was new to me, right? Because I'm the kind of guy, I go to the woods to hunt turkeys. Hey, nothing came up, not a big day. He goes to the woods, he finds the tracks, and it's like, you're dead. I'm coming after you. And he did. I followed that son of a gun through the woods, and he killed that bird just as sure as shooting. Come up over the hill. Oh, Gerry, whenever they come to an opening, they always get hung up, I know. I'm like, you know what, okay, buddy.
I'm sure you're referring to my father.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
But you sound like Steve.
my
I'm
gosh.
telling you.
I'm
You
telling
got us.
It was unbelievable. I obviously, I made a vow that day I would never hunt with him again. I go in the woods, I sit down under a tree. Not Judge Cass, he's going into the woods to get something to eat.
Or bigger, and he
More
thinks he
bigger,
hunts and puts it on a wall somewhere.
Listen, Judge Cass is a great guy, by golly. He's a good boy. He's one of the best hunters, Greg, I've ever met in my life. He's got a friend, Jake Ensign, who's an unbelievable hunter. But I've never met hunters like I have in Chautauqua County, for sure. No doubt. They're heads and tails above me, man.
An aside, have you been to Jake's house? Have you seen
I
his?
have. I've been to Jake's house several times, and it's very impressive.
Wow.
Very impressive.
Wow, indeed.
And I knew Jake, I was fortunate enough, right? Because Judge Cass and all these guys brought me into this fold, But I was fortunate to know Jake when he was up north and looking for his polar bear, and, he had his satellite phone, and he was checking in all the time. And it was fun. Beth and I followed a little bit, and good hunters. Good hunters. World-class hunters, really, Greg.
Is that what do you still do this as your kind of a hobby, that when you're not out doing stenography and making the lawyers look good in their presentations?
What, hunting?
Yeah.
Oh, listen, I'm a down-to-earth hunter, right? When turkey season comes around, I hunt turkey. When deer season comes around, I hunt deer. I usually kill a couple deer a year. I can at least do that because we have good property. But yeah, man, we've been putting venison in the freezer for years and years and years. Our kids grew up on it, and I'm a meat hunter. I'm different, I think, than Judge Cass and many of his. I'm a meat hunter. I'm going out to hunt meat, and that's where I'm going out, Some guys go out because they they like to go out and hunt,
Will you
Give the deer away.
Will you be shooting during the eclipse to see how the animals are acting?
They say that the animals get quiet during the eclipse, right?
Yeah.
That's what I've been told. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to see whether the birds stop chirping. I'm sure they will. But,
Back to your bio, you graduate from SIO, a railroad stop in Allegheny County, and then you go to Alfred for court reporting program, graduating in 1983. I didn't know there was even a court reporting program. How many are there?
Well, Buffalo has a court reporting program, and now, of course, there's several online. But back in the day, and when I started in Alfred in 1981. 1980, right? Fall of 1980. And Alfred had one of the nationally accredited programs for court reporting. Alfred was actually well known throughout the country for court reporters. And when I started at Alfred, in my first year, I was one of 40 students who was starting in court reporting. And there were 40 students in the senior class, right? I'm in the lower class. And, the attrition rate was probably 50%. So, I graduated with 20 other court reporters, and they were graduating 20 to 25 court reporters a year, and they were good reporters, Marlene Siriano, I graduated with her. She was a court reporter. Marlene got smart. She became a lawyer, But she was a court reporter, graduated in my time. And many of the ladies that I worked with in Buffalo, we all worked together as students at Alfred. It was a nice little school, nice school.
So you learned a certain technique of stenography they taught you there, which is different than the Paul Keating technique of life.
Well, of course, there's two techniques, right? There's pen writing, was we all call pen writing. Greg, shorthand, right? And most of my sisters, they learned Greg, when we were in high school. But that was what court reporting was. And then, I don't know, what was it? Maybe in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right? Late 1800s, they started to develop the machine writing. But I don't know, Greg, you're using your own physical style to make curves and lines and little tildes and clicks to make different sounds and words. And I would think that it would be difficult maybe to interact that back and forth with other reporters. The machine, you're hitting the keys and they're coming out. A, B, C, D, printed, that's what it is, It's hard for me to believe that machine writing wouldn't come out on top every time.
Yeah.
You literally can write word for word, verbatim. If you're able to keep up and your writing style is good and you're writing good, you're just making a really perfect record. You really are. And I'm sure they did too, right? I have studied a little bit of Greg just to see what it means, and what they're doing. And I can see where you could write Greg very, very accurately and very well,
Not to get too deep into the subject, but we had a thrill about 15 years ago, it seems like, here at the Jackson Center, where we had Paul Keating, Tom Muldowney, and a very young Gerry Linnecke.
Yeah.
And Paul was always kind of that. Did you guys compare notes? Did you at all?
No, we never compared notes. Now, I had the opportunity, because I took care of all of the notes in Mayville over the years that I was there, to manage Paul's notes. I had to take care of them. I had to make sure that they were in a good spot where they could be transcribed if they ever needed to be. What a joke that is, right, Greg? Right? Hey, we got to have this transcript, it's from way back, man, Paul Keating, forget it. Not happening, okay? Who's going to transcribe that? But I did have the opportunity to take care of Paul's notes, and Tom's notes, and Brian Walter's notes, and, who was the family court reporter? Phil. Phil's notes, all of the reporters' notes were my responsibility to make sure I knew where they were, how they could be found, and et cetera. But as far as comparing notes, no. I'm sure if I sat down with Tom Muldowney's notes, because I think that we were trained with the same system, I would be able to substantially probably read his notes, My uncle was a court reporter, and I can remember watching him write, and he would write, and everything would stop. There would be nothing happening. His hands would be going. I remember driving home with him, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He said, "I can't help it. I have to be moving my hands. I'm just hitting keys." I'm like, "That has to make an absolute mess of the notes that you've got going." He said, "Well, I know what they are. But I always think to myself, yeah, but how does anybody else know?" Really, that's the key. See, our notes have to be able to be transcribed. That's all there is to it. If I die tomorrow, who's going to transcribe the notes that I took for the state? They can be done now, at least, anyways.
So you had this biographically for the camera. You moved to Scranton in July of 1983, worked for a reporting company there as a freelance reporter. Then you moved to Coudersport in 84, worked for Potter County court reporter. Did the Regises, were they part of your world at Coudersport?
Yes, Johnny Regis was just hitting big. Johnny Regis's business was still in a little church in Coudersport. Adelphia was in a little church. And Johnny was running his company out of that business, and it wasn't really that big at the time. Now, my father knew Johnny because Johnny used to work at preheater in Wellsville. So they knew each other. They were good friends, you know. And I know that Johnny started that company with $500 in his garage. And he ended up in Coudersport, was his area. And he had a little church there. He was starting that company. And then, yeah, you betcha Johnny Regas was, and he had young boys that were coming up in his company, you know. And I'm telling you, go over to Coudersport. There were pretty ladies walking all over that town because the young boys would, you know. It was.
I don't understand. You want to elaborate?
That you don't understand. There were just a lot of pretty young girls in town. They were working at Adelphia, you know. They were working for Johnny. He was the big thing in town. You go to Coudersport now, I mean, they've got parking garages and all different things that were built just before Johnny fell, you know. And they stand over there now for, you know, it's interesting.
Then you found your way to Williamsport and then ultimately accepted a position in the state of New York as family court reporter, stationed in Buffalo. And then in 1997, which, by the way, we have a composite here of the Jamestown Bar Association of that year, you accepted a transfer and moved your family to Chautauqua County to become the Supreme Court reporter for Judge Joseph Gerassi, and spent essentially the next 20 years covering all Supreme Court judges, winning awards of the New York State UCS Quality Service Award.
That was a big one, Greg. That was a big one. I had to build a shelf for that award.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then you're transferred to county court, and until you retired, Judge Foley. But the biggest one, I just got a word on this, is that Peter Clark called us in and said that you had, not on your bio, but you were the president of the American Stenographer Society. And the acronym?
Ass. He liked that.
He did like that.
He did like that. He used to say that all the time. There's the president of the Society of Ass, or whatever. He was a funny guy. He was. Oh, I love Pete Clark.
And he also said you had a different pricing system when you did your stenography.
Correct.
There was the standard pricing, but oohs and ahs and ams.
Right, exactly.
And ifs. And then if you had 25%, you remove all of those ahs, ifs,
does, and ders.
And with an extra 50%, you actually would add the questions that should have been asked that were never asked.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. That was kind of like a sliding scale, but it worked well, you know, if you knew the, right?
I don't know. Most people probably don't know that and were wishing they did.
Oh, my gosh. You know, it was always, listen, it was important to me to write what I called every duh, and der, okay? Because it's the record. It's the record. You know, I did a trial with Paul Belts in Buffalo when I started out in Buffalo. I had a lot of experience, so my supervisor would put me in big trials, and I did some long trials, and I had one with Paul Belts. I think most people here recognize the name Paul Belts. And it was an 11-week trial. It was a guy who got hurt on the railroad. He was going to switch the tracks from one to the other, and when he pulled up on it, boom, man! And so Paul was representing him, and he ended up getting a really, really big verdict. But the case was mistried at the beginning. And apparently Paul had trouble asking a question, you know? He would skip, and he would 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 all through the question. And it really was pretty difficult to follow sometimes. And the jury sent back a note during the deliberations that they just were not able to follow the plaintiff's case because there were just too many ums and uhs, and they just weren't able to follow it. I thought that was amazing that a jury would send back that note. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, you know, that's a big thing for this case, because now the appellate division kind of has to determine what the heck's the story was. Is that really true, you know? And if the court reporter isn't reflecting that, if a jury sends back a note and says something about, and the court reporter has not reflected it at all throughout the trial, I think that's a problem. I think it's not an accurate record, you know? So I always wrote the ums, does, and ders. If they got ridiculous, then I would drop a couple here and there, you know? But I always thought they were important to the, you know, the flow of how someone was presenting themselves. You know, you can do a lot of things in the courtroom, Greg, outrageous, and they do not come across in the record that way. They just don't. they come across as words. You can't, there's no inflection, there's no nothing, you know. But you can give a little bit of that if you try to keep it real when you're writing what's being written. If somebody says ain't, right, or some, right? I mean, if somebody says isn't, I'm not writing is not. That isn't what they said, you know. So it's important. It was always important to
All
me
right,
to do
this
that.
is a little storytelling time now for you, because inevitably in the course of a trial that you've seen 30-plus years of, when there is emotion, and I realize you're doing words, but when there is emotion,
Yeah.
in one sense, you got to keep your head down.
For sure.
But every once in a while, you kind of look up and say, you got to be kidding me?
Well, now, all the time. Half the time, that's why my head's down. So that, you know, nobody, oh, geez, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's just, listen, it's tough when, it's tough. It's hard for a court reporter when things get emotional in the courtroom, because the court reporter gets emotional too, right? I mean, you know, people are hollering and yelling, and the next thing you know, the court reporter's like, oh my God, man, you know, I got to take this down. You're gonna stop a judge when he's in the middle of severely chastising somebody? If you can't get him chastising that guy, what are you gonna do, you know? Oh, Judge, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you tell him that again? You know, I mean, that's just not happening, right? So it's tough when it gets emotional in the courtroom, you know? You got to really concentrate sometimes, because your heart starts going, and you forget how to, you know, you lose your flow, and yeah, it's really difficult when it gets emotional in the courtroom. Not when it's an emotional, if it's crying or something, but when someone gets upset, then, you know, defendants get upset.
Well, that's noise. I'm curious, when you talk about somebody is crying, you pause, somebody's just
Sure,
breaking
it's
up. You put
easy.
witness is crying?
No. Now, Greg, that was always told us, look, you are not a witness. You can't be describing things in the record what you think is happening, right? I can put, this was the biggest word that I ever put into a transcript, indicating, right? Because that's really all I can do. I can't say, oh, witness is breaking down, you know. I can't do that. I can put pause in the record, you know. But it's really, Greg, not for the court reporter ever to do any of that kind of thing. It's up to the judge, right? It's up to the lawyers. Oh, Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is crying deep, you know. It's really more the lawyer's obligation to explain for the record what the heck is going on, not for the court reporter to try to interpret what's going on and put it in the record. You can't do that. You just can't do that.
When the judge, and I don't know this because I was pretty much a non-litigator, but when the judge brings the litigants forward, come to the bench. Come to the bench, and it's this conversation over the bench.
Right.
Are you brought in closer to take that down, or is that just a private conversation?
It depends on the judge.
And he'll indicate.
He'll indicate it, but it's almost always a private conversation to the judge when they're at the sidebar. Now, when I was working in the federal court had a slider right at the judge's bench. It'd slide right out, and my machine would go right on it. And anytime the judge would go to sidebar with the lawyers, I always went with them. And I'd slide my slider out, put the machine on, I'd sit among them, and we'd do our thing. Because all of his sidebars always went on the record. But very rarely really did that happen in New York State. Most judges, would just have their sidebars, and I would just put an indication in the record that the judge held a sidebar. That there was an off-the-record discussion. Might be an off-the-record discussion. It's a difference. There's a sidebar, the judge has got the counsel at the bench, and nobody can hear what they're saying. If it's an off-the-record, it's in the courtroom, they're talking freely back and forth, but it's off the record, right? In other words, counsel are at their table, counsel might say, Judge, off the record. The judge will say, yeah, off the record. Now they're talking in the courtroom, everybody can hear them. If you're in the gallery, anybody can hear them.
So the only one
So
that'll
there's a
not know
difference.
this will be on appeal, when all of a sudden it's off the record and the appellate judges won't know.
Appellate judges made a stink some years ago about the fact that they wanted court reporters to start indicating in the record whether or not the defendant was present at a sidebar, because it was coming up for issues in appeal. Defendants say, hey, I didn't know what they were talking about, So now they make the defendant waive that, right? Or they're entitled to be at the sidebar if they want to. But, we have to be very particular now about, the judge held a sidebar with the defendant present. Judge held a sidebar without the defendant, that type of thing. It's
not uncommon for when a person gives a question and the witness says, could you repeat it? And I suspect the lawyer may look to you and say, could you read that back?
Sure, many times, many times.
And when you read it back, have you ever been questioned about what you took down?
I have never been questioned about what I took down. I can't ever remember being questioned about what I took down in my career. I may have gotten, an isn't where it maybe should have been an is. That kind of thing, yeah, sure, because it's hard sometimes to hear that. It's hard sometimes. How many times have I interrupted counsel to say, counsel, did you say is or isn't? Counsel, did you say, right, did or didn't? Because sometimes you just talk so fast you can't tell. But what were we talking about, Greg?
I was talking about.
What was the question, counsel?
What was the question, yeah, exactly. So you repeated, somebody questions
Yes,
you
so-
about your
Yes,
abilities.
absolutely. And I was always happy to read back. I thought I was a great reader. Nowadays, these kids are coming out of college, they can't read their notes. Can you believe that? Could you believe you would come out of college and you can't read your notes? Why? Because everything's computerized now. All they have to do is look at their screen. Their dictionary is translating it for them, and it's right on their screen, and all they have to do is just read it. It wasn't that way when I started out. You had to know how to read your notes. You had to be able to pick up those notes and read them just like a book, just like people would even, oh my God, what is it, But you had to be able to pick up your notes and read them, and I always enjoyed doing that. Now, when I came to New York, and I read back a lot in federal court, but I never read back testimony the way I have in state court. I would read back questions all the time in federal court because the judge liked it and the attorneys knew that he did, and they would ask me to do it. But in state court, I've read back testimony more than I ever have in my career. But I always enjoyed doing it. Now, Judge Foley, the last judge that I worked for, I would say to Judge Foley once in a while, hey, Judge, listen, that's what I'm there for. Have me read it back. Because they will talk sometimes about, well, what was the question? But some of the judges nowadays, they don't think about looking at the court report and say, hey, Gerry, can you read that back? But near the end, Judge Foley once in a while might ask me to read something back. But Judge Foley rarely asked me to read anything back. Attorneys would, and Ed Barone would ask me to read something, or, DA or whoever it might be. But Judge Foley didn't much. But it's a judge thing. It's a judge thing. Some judges don't like the reporters, Greg. Some judges don't have anything to do with the reporters. Some judges just do your job and thank you very much. And that's okay, I suppose.
You're not shy.
Well, I'm not shy.
And as you're articulating your
I talk too
profession-
much, Greg. You should stop me when you think you should.
No. I think that's the beauty of it. You're known throughout the folks in the background behind me here have all seen you in MC roles, have been, they came to your retirement party in Mass. I mean, a TV station shows up to a
Did they?
retirement of a
No, they
stenographer.
did not.
They did.
Oh, they did
Maybe
not.
somebody made that up. Anyways,
Somebody made that up.
so, but where did you get this talent? I mean, not every stenographer, at least the few I've stumbled across, has that
Yeah,
ability.
don't know.
I mean, it's a skill set.
Well, I do know. I think, Greg, I know. I love people. I love people, right? People are great. You love people, don't you, Greg? I love people. People are great. I just think they're excellent to interact with and to talk to and et cetera. But I will say that my mother comes from a family of successful people, people who've had to be out there in society, and it's the Hennessy side, and the Hennessy's are gregarious. They are. They just have personalities, and they're kind of out there a little bit, But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's where it comes from, Greg.
So your mother was a homemaker, LPN, and a real estate broker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all.
Yeah. Well, she had 7 kids. She was working at it. She was working. I was number 6. We were easy. We were easy. It was the older ones that did them in, Greg. They were nothing when we came along, man. They were like vegetables. But yeah, it was great. Mom, she was homemaker, man. Nobody could rattle a pan in the cupboard like Mom could.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When she wanted you to know that she was not happy with you, she'd get a pan, boy, she'd rattle those pans.
Were you Gerrard when she was mad?
I was Gerrard to her.
Yeah.
But I wasn't Gerrard to anybody else. Mom, I was Gerrard too.
Yeah.
You know, and she was Cackle to me. Her name was Kathleen, but her sister couldn't pronounce it when she was young, and she called her Cackleen, and it became Cackle, and Mom was always known as Cackle. And I always called my mom by her name, you know? I mean, Mom and I were very close. I busted on her, right? I was busting on my mom most of the time, I think, growing up. I called her Cackle, I called her Kathleen, I called her Mom, I called her everything, you know?
Yeah.
But I was Gerry.
Gerry.
I was Gerry, yeah. Jerome,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, there's one time you weren't either.
Yeah, I bet.
This is in one of my many letters, and it's a memory of Gerry, which is a very old one. And this is back in 1990s. I got to go back 30-some years. And one Gerry Linnecke hatched a plot to come into a court as a litigant dressed up a la Marilyn Monroe. Sue Amsler, Krista Dwyer-Smith, and Tony were the prop mistresses
Wow.
procuring a wig, a mint green ball gown from the Salvation Army, and accessories. And this person will remain unnamed in the audience, former family court judge, was helping them dye a pair of high-heel mint green. And then at the appointed time, which may have been April 1st, she wasn't sure.
Who wasn't sure, Greg?
The person who wrote this.
Oh, the person.
Yeah, person. On the appointed day, let's just say, Donna Emo, for those who all remember Donna, another shy person, stuck her head into the county court and announced that there needed to be an arraignment. Gerry swept into the room all decked out to plead his case. It took a few minutes before a Judge Ward caught on. So tell me more about the genesis of that event, and I wondered if anybody caught that on the stenography.
Oh, nobody caught. Oh, there's pictures. Oh, are there pictures? God, that was the best. It was the best time I've ever had. Best time I've ever had in my career in the courts was that day. It was fantastic. Judge Ward and I used to, we used back in the day, right? If it was a birthday party, we had cake. Everybody would get together, we'd sit in the courtroom, you know, we'd have cake. And Judge Ward and I always sat together and ate our cake at these parties. And Judge Ward always used to say to me, man, Gerry, what, can you imagine? Wouldn't it be great if John Kennedy, to have Marilyn Monroe singing Happy Birthday to you? Oh my gosh, Gerry. And we used to laugh about it all the time. Oh yeah, cake, oh Judge, Marilyn Monroe, oh John Kennedy, you know. So Judge Ward was turning 50. And, and Judge Claire and Susan Amsler and Krista Dwyer were three funny women, you know. They really were. You wouldn't think they were, but they really were, you know. And they cooked up, I told them about this how Ward and I were always talking about this. And they were like, oh my gosh, we should. I was like, I'll do it. You know, if you guys get the stuff, I'll do it. And so we decided we were going to do it in the county courtroom, and we were going to make sure that nobody got in, right? Because it was going to be fun. So Judge Gerasi, I can't remember whether Judge Gerasi got wind of it or I told Judge Gerasi that we were going to do this, you know, because you know me, I was like, oh, Judge Gerasi, well, this is going to be great. Oh, my gosh, it's going to be so great. And he was like, yeah, Gerry, I don't think you should do that. I was like, oh, Judge, you know, really, you know, I don't think that's a good idea, Gerry. I don't think you should do that. So a couple of days went by, you know, and I went back to Judge Gerasi. I was like, you know, Judge, come on, now this is going to be fun. We're closing the courtroom down. Nobody's going to take any. It's going to be right. So eventually he acceded to it, and he said, "Okay, all right." And he said, "But I want you to make sure that the courtroom is closed and everything." So we did, and we had, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 people in the courtroom, and all the deputies and everybody, and Judge Ward, we had this huge cake made for him, you know, you are ancient, all that kind of stuff. And I was back in the prisoner hold, all decked out as Marilyn Monroe, and I looked good. I mean, they'd drawn a little dark V. I mean, I looked good, Greg. I had the wig, right? They had to cut the back out of my shoe so I could get my foot in the shoe. We had it set up. Fairleigh Fisher had a fan there, you know, so we could do the fan up the dress, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I came out and I sang to him, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, Mr. Presiding Judge. happy birthday to you. And I got about that far, and he couldn't take it anymore. He got up, he comes up, we're like, and then I had to go back up and say, hit it fairly. And she hit the fan, and the fan started blowing my dress up, and I was doing. We had so much fun doing that. That was fun, Judge Claire. That was a great day. That was such a fun day, man. And Ward loved it. Loved it. We got some great pictures, and yeah. But it was almost nixed by Judge Gerasi, but he found some humor. He decided to let us go with it.
So,
he was concerned about,
yeah.
honest making a mockery of his courthouse.
I am looking at the 1997 composite, and I do see Judge Ward. I also see Judge Hartley, who's here,
So he was,
and Judge Gerasi, all the names you've mentioned.
You
And
betcha.
I think is that Judge Adams, too, on the far
Judge
left?
Adams. Do you know I never knew Judge Adams? I
Okay, maybe not.
I don't know whether I think I met Judge Adams once, but
That's Judge Cass. That's
I
Judge
never
Cass,
knew
Willard Cass.
Judge Adams. Yeah, Judge Cass on the left.
Okay.
He was the very first judge, obviously, that I worked with here in Chautauqua County. Because before I was assigned here, I used to travel here quite a bit. Beth would tell you, I would travel to Mayville sometimes 2-3 times a week just to cover. If like Tom, he was getting near the end of his stay, he had a lot of vacation he had to use, he probably had to golf. I would go over and I would cover for whatever was going on. But Judge Cass was the one that I would mostly cover for. And I'd come down to Jamestown, we'd go up to the, 4th, 5th floor of the what's the building there that he used to sit in, way at the top. But yeah, I loved Judge Cass, man.
Well, they all have idiosyncrasies.
Sure they do.
And
Of course they
Can
do.
you go down the list?
Of course
Let's
they
just
do.
say-
Excuse me, it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime. Off we go, Judge Cass, right in the middle of this question. Isn't it true that you beat him? Excuse me, counsel, it's 12 o'clock, we'll take our lunch. That was Judge Cass, loved it. I was like, that's fantastic. We'll see you back here, counsel, in 1 hour. We'd come back and the judge would say, okay, go ahead, counsel, and he'd say, beat the hell out of him. Right. He was great. I gotta tell you, the judge that I worked for in Williamsport, the federal judge, he was an older judge. He was a retired judge, but he had a full caseload, so they hired me as a contract reporter. He was much older than I was, right? He was so good to me, he was so good to me. I loved that man. Judge Willard Cass was so good to me. I loved working with him. He was great. I was just a schmuck, right? But he was very good to me. I had a lot of fun with him, man. He was fun. Always asked me about my family, and super guy.
Judge Gerasi.
Judge Gerasi, we got along wonderfully. I had a little bit of an in with Judge Gerasi because my Uncle Bill Hennessy, who I referred to maybe a little bit earlier with the Hennessy's, Uncle Bill Hennessy worked in state government with Cuomo. He was the Department of Transportation chairman, and Gerasi was the Department of Agriculture chairman at the time. So they knew each other very well, and they worked together in Albany. And so when Judge Gerasi left state service and came back to Chautauqua County, he was, of course, put in as the Supreme Court judge. So when I came here to work with Judge Gerasi, I had mentioned to him, that my uncle was Bill Hennessy and that I had told him that I was coming to work with him and he wanted me to give his regards and et cetera. Well, Judge Gerasi really liked Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill was the Department of Transportation chairman who, when the bridge came over the lake,
Yeah.
and he negotiated the contract with the Seneca Nation to get 17 through the Seneca Nation. And they made him an honorary chief and gave him a beautiful headdress. It was pretty, I thought it was, I'm still trying to get hunting rights over there, Greg, but I'm not having any luck. But
Judge Caskin.
that was funny. Oh, you're laughing on the inside.
Yeah, Judge Cask, he's an honorary
I
something.
know he is.
Honorary
Listen, he's honorary too, but he knows how to play it over there. Yeah, but Judge Gerasi loved Uncle Bill, and so I got a little bit of it,
Yeah.
But Judge Gerasi and I got along very, very well. Listen, he was another one of those judges that were much older than I that just treated me so good, you know. And I really always appreciated that. You know, you don't expect to be necessarily treated well or, I don't know, by some of the.
Now, Judge Hartley, he's over my shoulder. You want to talk about
Yeah.
him?
Judge Hartley was a great judge. Listen, Judge Hartley, man, he was right forever down there at the end of the hall. That was back before any of the construction projects were going on. And, you know, Hartley was down there at the end of that hall, man, and he was holding court. And I mean, that place was like a gauntlet. I mean, there were people up and down that hall. It was a zoo, sometimes up and down that floor. But Judge Hartley was very matter of fact, right? You know, Judge Hartley heard the arguments, man, and, you know, he was very matter of fact. He wasn't the kind of guy maybe that was you were going to have a guffaw time with. But he'd been the judge for a long time, you know, and I thought he was a great judge. He did a good job, and you know, he seemed to be well respected. And so, yeah, listen, he was my friend. All of them were. They were so good to me, you know. But Judge Hartley's a little more closer to me in age maybe than some of the other guys. So we've been friends for a long time. I took Judge Hartley one time over to our hunting grounds in Allegheny County, and he hunted with us over there, and yeah, we had a good time.
Well, I'll tell you off record about Allegheny County. Judge Hartley, he got us the set of the original Nuremberg trial transcripts because of Allegheny College. So that's a story for later on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all connected. And then of course, we got to talk about Judge Claire, because all we know about her at this point
Judge Claire.
for the video is the fact that she dyed your shoes.
She's the best. Judge Claire's the best. Judge Claire was great because she was Judge Gerassi's law clerk when I came there, right?
Yeah.
So Judge Claire and I were like friends, you know. I mean, we got along really well, and she was great friends with Krista and Susan Amsler, and, you know, I had a lot of respect for Krista and Susan and Judge too. And yeah, she was a lot of fun. She was a good girl, you know. She was one of the very first ladies that I worked with as far as law clerking. There was one other in the federal court that I worked with, but Judge Claire was one of the very first ladies that I worked with as a law clerk.
Well, speaking of that, at that time,
I thought Judge Claire was a very good family court judge. I thought she was very compassionate, and I thought Judge Claire was a really good. I enjoyed working with her in the family court. She was awesome to take, you know? Yeah. Maybe that's why I liked her so much, Greg. Maybe I don't really like her, but she was awesome to take, you know?
And I know your feelings towards Judge Ward. Was Judge Ward, you know, you guys, you know, unlike, you know, sometimes lawyers having relationships with judges, stenographers having relationships with judges, even lawyers, is that ever a concern at all? I mean, I realize it's ethically no issue, but
Yeah.
it's just, you know, you're professionals in your status. He's got a role, you got a role.
Yes.
Everybody's got a role, but is socially outside of that, is it?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, I worked with a couple of judges in Buffalo that Beth and I were very social with. They invited us to their home. We took our kids. We would be on the lake with them, you know. It just depends. It would just depend on who the judge is, you know. But I will say, Greg, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems was when, well, listen, like you said, we all have our roles, right? You're the judge, I'm the court reporter, you're the clerk, you're the law clerk, you're, you know, the deputy, right? The biggest problem would come if, you know, a court reporter might have some input on something and the judge doesn't want to hear it, right? I mean, let's face it, judge is the judge. Judge is the judge. That's where the buck stops, you know. I've made many times over the years, tried to make suggestions to judges, you know, and yeah, they don't always fly, you know, they just don't always fly. You know who is was a real good listener in that regard, because we were contemporaries age-wise, and I felt like I could say these things, you know. It was Judge Stephen Cass. Judge Stephen Cass would listen, you know. Hey, Gerry, what do you think about this? You know, well, I'll tell you what I think about this. I've seen people do this, this, and this. And he was the kind of guy that I could see that I would be like, hey, you listen? Hey, how about that, man? How about that? But, you know, You know, it was really easy to be a court reporter, Greg, when I started to get some age on, right? Because the next thing you know, you're older than the judges. I mean, I was older than Foley, and even though he's the judge, of course, I mean, it's just nice to know that, you know, hey, buddy, you know, I mean, I've been around too, you know, I've been here too. So couldn't always do that, you know, I mean, what would I have said that ever to Judge Willard Cass or Judge Drossi or anything? No, you know, you don't do that, you're young, what do you know, you know? But as you got older, it was a little easier to be able to say, you know, you ought to try this, you know, you should do this. Always, you know, never, I mean,
Did you
always.
tell the time about the court report,
Is he supposed to be talking?
He is the current judge. Even I have to listen, you know?
when I had a new court officer and you thought it was fun to give him a different name?
Oh, God,
Would you
Greg.
please-
You know, Greg, you have to, listen, sometimes you just gotta get through the day, Greg, you know? We had this deputy, oh, great kid, oh, he's such a great kid. And I've done this I said to him one day, I said, now listen, he was new in the courtroom, I said, listen, Judge Cass is a great guy, but he's very particular, and you know, people screw his name up. His name is Stephen W. Cass. Stephen W. Cass. And that's what it was when he came in the door, and I'll never forget Judge Cass. He's a funny guy. He comes in the door and he says, all rise, court's in session, the Honorable Stephen W. Cass presiding. And Judge Cass was walking and he stopped and he turned and he looked and then he turned and he kept going. It was great. There was so many times that I would say something to somebody and they'd say, get away from me. Don't talk to me. That's not true. I don't believe you. Oh, God.
Was there a reason for that?
Just because I knew I could do it, Greg, I guess. I wanted to hear it happen. I wanted to hear it happen. It happened, Greg.
All right, this probably is a perfect time to drop this. Your
gosh.
buddy, the manager of the Chautauqua bookstore, wrote me a lot of things, but at least he talked about tonight. And he said, encourage people to watch over here, because Gerry is about to take his brand to the next level.
Oh, you know.
He will be in conversation with Greg, his brand. Describe what Earl
What is my-
Rothfuss, right,
Yeah.
is talking about the Gerry Linnecke brand.
Well, listen, Earl's a great guy. Do you know Earl?
I do.
Earl's not me. And I think he likes, right, you know, so I'm that brand. I'm gregarious and out there and happy and peppy and bursting with love and, you know, I don't know. That's my brand, I guess. Earl and I get along well. I pick on him a lot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, Greg. He barely knows me. We haven't even known each other for really probably only 10.
Yeah, well, he sent this note out, and I was copied in to people that apparently were some society. What society is this?
Oh, my gosh. Well, well, Greg, I belong to the Catholic Church in Mayville. The Catholic Church, once in a while, in some of their parishes, have an organization called the St. Vincent de Paul Society. St. Vincent de Paul was dedicated to the poor and helping the poor. So they have that society in the church, and I'm on that society, and so is Earl. So Earl sends out an email, right, to all you lovely St. Vincent de Paul people. And I turned to Beth. I said, well, there's half the stuff is out the window, Beth. What am I, you know, all these lovely older church-going people listening to me talk about the debauchery of the courtroom.
Yeah.
And then I come in, and who's sitting there but, right? Oh, tell you. I looked at Beth, I said, there goes the other half of the stuff for
Well,
crying
yeah,
out loud.
let's talk about that for a second. We need to spend a few moments, because I did bring the composite out as sort of a way to prompt a few things, but maybe our audience consists of that, because, you know, half of the conversation did go out the window, and I felt dampened when Art Bailey shows up.
He's the best.
You know, I mean, Art.
As soon as I saw Art, I knew it was half over. There it is, that's half my stuff.
Well, give us that Art Bailey story. He'll be glad to hear
Art
it.
Bailey. Art and I had a lot of fun over the years because I like to banter with Art, you know. I don't know how many people took the opportunity to banter with Art, but you know, Well, first of all, Art would be the first one to tell you that he knows how to give a thorough argument, right? But Art had trouble getting through an argument without referring to something that very few people in the courtroom really recognized what it was that he was talking about. He was given an argument one time, and I don't know what happened. It was before Gerrard, I think. And Art started talking about Gunga Din. And I just remember taking this. He'd probably already been arguing for 15 or 20 minutes, and he started talking about Gunga Din. And back in the day, when an attorney would do something like that to you before the internet, you were like, oh God, oh, how am I going to find that? Oh my God, it's going to take me an hour just to figure out what he's talking about, try to find these words, you know? So I corralled Art afterwards. I was like, Art, really, Gunga Din? Art, we need to talk about Gunga Din while we're in the middle of our arguments in there? Oh, well, so the next couple of days later, man, I got a package from Art in the mail all about the history of Gunga Din and everything that he had done over the years, you know. And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. But I got all my spellings because he sent it to me in the mail. Oh, Arthur, your arguments were stellar sometimes. Art was, yeah. You're a legend, Art. Don't think you're not, buddy. You are a legend. But I liked seeing Art come in the courtroom because if nothing else, he was lovely to take. He was lovely to take. I mean, even though after a while you wanted the hook, you were looking for the hook, right? That was coming. Arthur, come on, Arthur. But he was lovely to take, and he knew his argument, and he wanted to, you know, I liked Art a lot. And Art, everybody else would come into the courtroom, and they would sit back in the audience, right? All the attorneys, you know, they'd come in, they'd sit in the audience, not Art. Art came in the side door and came right up and sat right down at the council table. And that's where Art was, and he held court right there until, by golly, his case came along, and that was Art. You always knew that Art was coming right up, and he was going to sit right at council table, by golly. And that was one of the reasons I would always, because I was walking right by a council table. The next thing you know, I'm talking to Art, you know, about something stupid. Buffalo Bills draft day. Who was it, Art, that came to the Buffalo Bills and played, that big, great athlete that came and played for a year for us? Who was it? He was the big receiver. I don't know, man. Art and I got into that for, oh my gosh, a month it seemed like, back and forth, trying to get Art to get off my back about this receiver that he thought I loved and I hated.
Well, you're
Arthur.
sort of the Mel Kiper of Chautauqua County.
Do you know that I don't know who Mel Kiper is? I mean, I think I do. He's a baseball guy, right?
No. He's the draft guy. NFL draft guy. You see
Mel
my TV
Kiper.
Isn't that right?
He's an idiot. He's horrible. I never liked Mel Kiper. That's it. Let's go, Mel. Mel Kiper. Oh, Lordy.
There's no segue here at all. But we do have, I was talking with Phil Calla when I was on the phone with Peter Clark.
Phil.
I mean, all of this was going on this last couple
Phil.
of days. And
Oh my gosh.
Phil allowed us how that you would often help him. I mean, you help lawyers. I mean, you would give advice and say,
Good.
maybe you ought to consider
That's
this.
yeah.
Was that normally something in your nature that you felt like a mentor at times?
After a while, Greg, you see it so much and you hear it so much and you see someone try to do it and you're like, I know you. Sometimes I just felt like, try this, or hey, try that, or do this. I don't ever remember giving Phil Calla advice because Phil Calla needs no advice, for sure. Phil Calla, what a character. You want to hear a great Phil Calla story?
Oh, okay.
So way back, and Judge Clare might even, so way back in the day, right, Judge Gerrard gives up his position and he retires, and who's the very first judge that comes down into Chautauqua County was Sal Martocci. Okay, now Sal Martocci, he came down from Buffalo, and he was just a new judge, or I don't think he would have come down, but Sal Martocci had some juice, he was like one of those guys that you met. Sal had some juice, So we used to get together back in the day. Judge Clare had been elected judge, and she was new, and she was down in her end, and we had Dave Turnbull and Frankie and me, and we had a bunch of us guys around, and we used to get together at certain times of the year, like right now with the March Madness. And Larry Zobel would open up his office, and we'd all go down there, and we'd have maybe a little bottle, and we'd have some cigars, and we had fans set up in the windows, and we would sit in Larry Zobel's office watching the NCAA tournament, late in the day on a Friday or whatever it was. And gosh, man, we would have a heck of a time down there. One time we were down there, and we were smoking, and we were having a heck of a time. And Judge Claire, I think, eventually, and she knew that we were down there, I think. I think Judge Claire knew we were down there. But one time she sent, she sent a messenger down to just say, "I can smell your smoke." So we stopped doing it at the courthouse, and we decided that we would go on over to Webb's. So we were going over to Webb's for our cigar smoke, right? We're all sitting around the table, and we were just a men's, right? Stupid, fun, great. And we invited Sal Martocci, and of course it was all of us guys, and Phil Calla was there too, and Phil came over with us, and we were at Webb's, and we were sitting around in the bar, and we were smoking, and we were having a great time. And Martocci's on that side of the table, and Phil's here, and I'm down here somewhere, and I don't know what we were doing, but Judge Martocci said something to Phil, or did something. We weren't playing cards, but at any rate, Judge Martocci said something to Phil. Funny, good-natured, whatever. And of course, Phil, good-natured, funny guy. We're all at Webb's. We're having a great time. He looks up and he looks at the judge and he goes, "Oh, fudge you." And the judge, he was like, "She can't talk to me like that." And Phil was like, "Oh, of course, I'm sorry. Fudge you, Your Honor." And I was like, oh my God, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. But that was Phil, man. That was Phil, Judge Martocci, big guy down from Buffalo, You can't talk to me like that. Sorry. It was funny. It was great. That was when I really fell in love with Phil Calla. I've loved Phil Calla for a long time, man. He's a funny guy. I would love to see him come into court. He would stand in Jamestown City Court, and one of his client would be going off with Judge Lamancuso, who's a whole nother story, by the by. And Phil would be standing there, and his client would be going off to the judge, and the judge would be listening to him, and he'd get done, and Phil would look over and he would say, "Do you mind if I have a turn?" That was Phil, right? It was great. Loved it. He always entertained me, man. Still does sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
We're going to do some golfing.
Good. Judge Lamancuso, since you brought him up, though he's not here, he'll no doubt listen to
Yeah.
this.
Lovely man.
Yeah.
Love him to death. Hardest man I've ever had to try to take in my entire life. When I worked in Scranton, I went to a town meeting with the guy that I was working for. I was first year of court reporting, and we went to this town meeting. It was horrible. We're coming out of the town meeting, and he did the reporting. And I said, "Fred, dude, come on, man, that was terrible. What do you do in there? Come on, what are you doing?" And he said, "Gerry, I just write, etc." 40 years ago, Greg, and I still remember him saying that, "I just write, etc." I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? I was looking for a real answer. What am I supposed to do when I get into that situation? But you know what? I think he was right. Because when I started working with Judge Lamancuso, that's when I realized that, oh my God, he's right. Just write, etc. The guy is so fast. He's so, you just can't do it, right? You can't do it. No, he will destroy a reporter if you allow him to. But you just had to get used to him. You had to get used to what he was saying. He would read you your rights so fast. You have the right to remain, boom, down the road. It would be like, you have the right to remain, etc. Right? With Judge Lamancuso, because you knew what the language was, and you would fill it in. Now, no court reporter likes to do that, but by God, they will if they have to. Because what am I going to do? Interrupt Judge Lamancuso every 3 minutes? No, he would hate me. He would hate me. I didn't want him to hate me. I wanted him to like me, So every time he'd be, "Oh, yeah, no, Judge, absolutely, you're," He was the toughest. Well, he wasn't the toughest judge I ever tried to write for. When I was in Buffalo, I was writing for Judge John Michalak, who now is no longer a judge anymore. He was outrageous. He was horrible. And Jim Gainey came to me and he said, at one point, he said, "Gerry, would you consider taking him on as an assignment? Nobody will take him." I said, "You know what, Judge, Jim?" I said, "I've spent my career so far trying to be a really good writer and reporter." I said, "He will destroy me. I don't want it." And so I gave that up, and I ended up taking Mayville shortly after that.
Was there ever, who assigns you? You don't, when you go from one court to another, who actually does that?
That's Buffalo.
Buffalo?
We're all Buffalo reporters. Even if we're in Chautauqua, Allegheny County, wherever Niagara County, we're all Buffalo-based reporters. Our supervisor comes out of Buffalo. They assign most reporters are assigned to a judge. If you're a reporter with some, longevity, you're going to be assigned to a judge. And if you're a reporter coming in new, you're going to be doing the family court, you're going to be filling in, you're going to be traveling. When I was in Buffalo, I traveled crazy. I traveled to Chautauqua all the time. I was traveling all over, every county in the district, Judge Punch up in Albion and everywhere, and it was great. I loved it. I loved to travel. But Buffalo does all the assigning. If I wanted to leave for the day, I'm on the phone to Buffalo. Hey, it's 4 o'clock, I've had enough, I'm leaving. But I can't leave without calling Buffalo and let them know what's going on. So that was one of the beauties of Chautauqua County, Greg, was that there was no supervisor, right? My supervisor's in Buffalo. It's not like she's in the next room.
Right.
So that was really great, it was just nice to be in Chautauqua, and I did my job, and she couldn't come to me and say, Gerry, I need you to go to Allegheny County, or Gerry, I need you to go up to Part 14 and cover that part, which they would do in Buffalo.
I don't know if you can see the composite from where you are with the lights, but as you scan it a little bit, and this is the 90s.
What are you talking about? This?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a composite?
Isn't it?
I guess it is.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. But 97, 98, this is your early years. This is the years of which you are just kind of working your way through. You're wet band, but there's some real interesting people like the Jeff Weese's of the world.
Oh, Jeff Weese. Wow.
John Goodell.
Oh, John Goodell.
So
Oh, my gosh, John Goodell. Oh, Greg. Jeff Weese, I never really knew that well. Jeff Weese was okay. Jeff Weese, I knew who he was, and I had him in court several times, but I knew John Goodell quite well, I had a soft spot for John, I don't know why. I liked John. John, God bless him. John came, there's so many, don't even know what I can really, We had this wonderful deputy. His name was Becker. He was a state trooper. God, he was a lot of fun. He was a lot of fun. I'm sure that a few of us remember Becker. But Becker came into the courthouse one day, and he had this fart box. But it was one of these things that he could hold it in his hand, and he could put it over there under Dale Robbins. Hit it once in a while, So he had it back in the day. As you go into Judge Ward's courtroom, there was a desk right there at the left, where the deputy would have a desk right there. And then there were the benches and stuff. Well, Bob put that dumb thing there, and don't you suppose John Goodell came in there and sat down. And, Greg, you can't even do it justice. It was beyond funny. It was beyond funny. It was disrespect. It was all of it. But he kept hitting that thing, and John would look around. God bless him. John had no sense of humor, right? John was a wonderful man, but it wasn't like John necessarily, at least for me, never detected it, but I didn't, he wasn't humored.
I see a pretty passive-looking guy named Chuck D'Angelo there, too. Now, also, I've heard he's similar in the courtroom. Is that right?
Similar as to what?
Passive.
Chuck was the kind of guy that when Chuck came in the courtroom, I expected Chuck was going to win. There were some attorneys that came into the courtroom, and I was just like, he's winning. He knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing. He knows his case. Paul Webb was like that. Mm-hmm. When Paul Webb came into the courtroom, and I hated to see Paul come in the courtroom because he was so fast. And you couldn't put a sentence together, and, he would, but man, I'm telling you, I loved Paul Webb. Whenever he came in the courtroom, I thought, Paul's going to win. But Charlie was the same way. I always thought when Charlie came in the courtroom, Charlie's going to win. Charlie knows his case. Charlie's smart. Charlie's a great attorney. His arguments were always, I thought, top notch. I've listened to a lot of attorneys argue over the years, and I always thought that Chuck really put a very good argument on the record. And he was easy to take, too, So, yeah, I really liked Charlie a lot. Charlie was good to see come in the courtroom.
Were you there during the Bruce Carpenter days at all?
Yeah, you betcha. Bruce tapping his way down the hall with his assistant. She was always there helping him out, you know. And yeah, as a matter of fact, Bruce was working quite a little bit, right, in a family court at the time when I started out. And Bruce was around, and he was still, you know, getting around pretty good. And he had his assistant. And yeah, Bruce Carpenter. How about that one? Boy, that goes way back, doesn't it?
At the time, way back when, and I'm referring back to my wife is here, Cindy was first law clerk with Judge Cass and Judge Adams.
Yes.
But there was a court reporter, Jim Fox, who was there all the time. I don't know if he was there at all when you were there, Jim Fox, but
You know, I don't even
know the name?
really recognize the name, Greg.
Okay.
Oh, he was a news reporter, not a court
Oh,
reporter.
no, I'm sorry, news reporter, Dunkirk News, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, news reporter.
I probably would recognize him, but didn't really know who he was,
So I
maybe.
was curious, this is relationship-wise, sometimes big capital cases, there is reporters there, not often.
Sure.
In fact, I would
Right.
suspect news reporters are rare. But do you get approached at all saying, since you got all of the information,
Yeah.
that they would seek information from you which are on the record?
In 40 years, I was only ever asked by an outside agency to do transcripts in a case once, and that was Hadi Matar. And I got a couple of calls from California. They wanted a transcript of some of the early proceedings, and I did do some transcripts for some news agencies in that way. But that's the only time I've ever been contacted by a news agency ever for a transcript or anything else, and that was Hadi Matar. Yep. And none after that, just some of the initial ones, and I'm so glad I'm not there for that, Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, fun. I won't say it wouldn't be fun. Court reporters love that kind of stuff. Listen, that's fun, right? That's fun. I mean, you're in the middle of it all, you know. That was one of the beauties of being a court reporter. You're right in the middle of it all. All of it. You're right there. It was always great. I always loved that, you know. But who needs that?
Did you feel restrictions, because you're taking down public record? This is court, open court, and people would talk to you. Did you feel like you had some ethical relationship to sort of get what you took down to yourself until it was all over?
Well, I mean, the record's the record.
Yeah.
Courtroom's open.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was always happy to talk about anything that happened in the courtroom that anybody else heard or saw, you know. And because it's an open courtroom and because I was the court reporter, I'm not saying that if I was in a casual conversation with a friend, you know, and something was said, I might say, oh, that's not accurate, you know. I mean, this is what really went down, you know. But you got to be careful about that kind of thing, right? I mean, court reporters have been let go for divulging, not even divulging information, but commenting on information in the courtroom, you know, as if they had, you know, some kind of special right or input on some type of thing. You know, that's not good. No, you got to be really careful. I remember when my family, Beth, and all the kids, you know, when cell phones became big and Facebook came out. And, and I never was on Facebook. But one time I decided that, hey, you know, Facebook, everybody's on Facebook. Maybe I'll get a Facebook account. So I downloaded Facebook onto my phone. And I remember Beth saying to me, Gerry, that's not a good idea. Your personality is not good for that. Don't use it. And Greg, I've never even liked anything on Facebook before. I have it. I can go into it. I can maybe see what some of my family or other people are doing. But I have never made a Facebook entry or ever done anything in Facebook. I have a profile, but that's it. I think that was excellent advice on Beth's part. And still, even in retirement, I just don't do it. You know?
So Beth says you didn't have the personality to really kind of manage a Facebook account. What was she saying?
She was saying that I would do something stupid. and get myself canned, right? She was saying, Gerry, you're gonna be flippant, you're gonna say something, yee-haw funny, and it's gonna not go, stop, don't do it. So I thought that was good advice. I didn't think it was at the moment. I was like, really? Everybody else gets one, but I don't get one? But I thought to myself, that's good advice. That's good advice. She's a smart girl. She told me, don't use it. And so I never did.
You've been an MC.
What do you think of that, Jane? Huh? I bet you, by golly.
So you are an MC extraordinaire. I mean, whether it's a sports banquet, a bar association, golf tournament, somehow you gravitate towards the mic and you do a great job. And you're a storyteller. But can you recall a story where and you're not shy about calling out attorneys, many of them are in the audience here today, just to tell a story or two about them. You're good at that. Have you ever found a time where, in fact, you told a story about somebody and it fell flat? I mean, just plain died. Silence.
I don't know. I did just a little bit ago when I made one of the best jokes I had, and there was nothing but crickets in here. I thought that was a good joke.
We'll play that back.
No, I mean, of course, Greg. Are you kidding me? Listen, how many times has Beth looked at me and said, you know, Gerry, can't you just not comment? Can't you just not say anything? You know, I'd be the kind of guy, Greg, that if I thought I knew who you were and I saw you on the street and I wasn't quite sure if you were Greg or John, I might come. I would come right up to you and I would say, "Hey, John, how are you doing?" You'd say, "It's Greg." And Beth, Gerry, can't you just say hello? Do you have to throw a name out there? You know, but that's me, right? I want to be liked. Hey, I want to know your name. I want to know who you are, you know, and I will take the chance to be an idiot. But sure, I've said things about, absolutely. You kidding?
As we're kind of drawing closure, because this could go on for hours.
Go on forever. Close it up, Greg.
No. Your comment to me when you actually accepted was asking a little about what was going to happen. Then you said, so it's not just you and me
Right.
and a camera with some wine and a good cigar.
Correct.
Are you pulling my chain? Dang, am I supposed to bring my wife? Oh, my golly. Unbelievable. And so here we are at the conclusion of this interview we've done here, which has been captured by many. Did we meet your expectations?
Oh, Greg, we haven't even touched it. No doubt about it. You know, Greg.
Should we do an unplugged?
Do you
too?
know, Greg? You've heard of the Sports Illustrated curse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm hoping that there's not a Greg Peterson curse. I'm hoping I'm not dead in 2 weeks. You know? Oh, he got his interview. He's done.
Don't talk to them behind me.
No, it was a good interview, Greg. I like the way it went. Listen, man, come on. I could talk forever about it, right? I mean, stories. It's just what a fantastic career. I mean, man, what was I doing? Nothing. I was hunting. I was fishing. You know, I had an aunt and uncle who were court reporters. I took typing in the 10th grade, and I excelled at it. And by the time I was, my mother said, Gerry, you're doing so good at typing. Math, terrible. Science is terrible. What was I going to do, Greg? Dig a ditch. That's what I was going to do. So my mom said, you're doing so great at typing. Why don't you just become a court reporter? I was like, okay, see ya. I'll be back for dinner. And yeah, that's what I did. I just geared myself towards it. But boy, talk about fortuitous things, because I just don't know what I would have done in life if it hadn't been for court reporting. And it was so much fun. And thank God I learned it. I mean, I went to Alfred. I have a 2-year degree in 3 years, Greg. I have a 2-year degree in 3 years because I spent my first year drinking beer and gambling and wandering around town. But then Beth straightened me out again. I'd be in a ditch if it wasn't for Beth, for sure. She straightened me out again, and I went back and I got my degree. I got knuckled down those 2 years, and I got my degree, and she was going to the university at the time. She did her 4-year degree in 3 years. I did my 2-year degree in 3 years. So, but yeah, God bless Beth. I can't believe she's stuck with me all these years, Greg. But hey, it was how fun. How fun. You know, they say court reporters are some of the smartest people out there. Did you realize that, Greg?
Should we take a vote?
Just that they've heard so much stuff. I mean, you know, you'd be like, where did you ever hear that? Well, I took a trial one time, and that was half the day's testimony. And, you know, they just heard so much stuff. I've honestly, I've really only probably met a handful of dumb court reporters. They're smart people. They're smart, intelligent women. Now, they're all, do you know I was the last court reporter in the 8th District? The last male court reporter in the 8th District. There are no male court reporters in the 8th District anymore. I was the last one and retired out, and now they're all females. Outstanding reporters, smart, funny women, you know? They really are. So, yeah, I have no complaints. It was a great career, you know, and I ended up in one of the most amazing places that I think I could have with Chautauqua County. You know, there's just, Chautauquans don't realize what they have. I've always believed that. I used to talk to all the kids groups that would come to the school and say, how many of you can't wait to get out of Chautauqua County? You know, and the hands would go up. And I would say, you know what? Don't be like that. You don't know what you have here. Chautauqua County's a great place. We're just so happy to raise our kids here, and yeah, so it's all good. It's good.
You're good. And
Yeah.
this has been a great evening for us,
Yeah.
and I know we got a tip
Well,
of the
listen, I
iceberg.
appreciate it, Greg. You know, I mean, I feel unworthy for this kind of thing, really. I mean, you know, what are we doing here, people? But, you know,
Well, I can tell you
but
why.
I appreciate it. I like you, Greg. I like you. I appreciate being around you. I really, you know, there was a lot of times when I thought, oh, I don't really know Greg that well, or I haven't really had the opportunity to get to know Greg that well, you know, but I feel like I get to know you more and more each time I see you, so I appreciate
With
it.
that, we should probably end, but I know why they're here, because they want a picture taken with you, and so we're going to do that
Who
in
does?
just a moment. All of these people, all of these people.
You're all awesome to come out here tonight, honestly. Why? Thank you. I appreciate it. And I don't think I swore. Did I swear?
No, you did a wonderful job.
I asked Beth whether it was all right for me to swear tonight. She
No,
didn't
just-
even have to answer. Just the look answered it, Greg.
Well, and you did a great job of covering the Phil Callis story by
Phil.
not being exact.
Oh, Phil. Rock and roll, Phil.
So with that, we'll wrap up, and we're going to take a
Thank
picture.
you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Gerry
man.
Linnecke.
Appreciate it. You're a good man, Greg.